Hey, if Precure insists on bringing actual toddlers in, then I don't see why you discriminate now. We opened this week with a small girl playing in an alleyway late at night as though this were the setup to some cheap horror flick and speak of the devil. Hey kid, you wanna take part in a jump scare filled RPG maker game with an absolutely depressing twist ending? Well, thankfully, this girl ended up with a far more chill, evil hellspawn. This of course resulted in Venalita making a contract with the girl even more haphazardly than with Kiwi. Legit, I just want to know what this character's script looked like. Anyway, speaking of whom, Venalita introduced a girl named Korisu Morino to her senpai villainesses. Her name was likely meant to be a play on several different things, including being a homonym for small forest squirrel, Korosu, which means to kill in Japanese, and of course, Aisu, or rather, Alice. Okay, Utena, you have way too much culture even for me. With that, they decided to test out her powers on the Tresmagia. First, she lured them into a trap with, I think, one of this little brat's monsters. Either that or Carnival, and thankfully they went with Deddy rather than Junior, which, if that were the case, ugh. However, the Tresmagia, or more specifically Sayo, couldn't escape from the true horror. Oh, I'm not talking about her friends being possessed and forced into doing some very lewd things to her, that's just kind of typical. I'm more talking about her having a bad case of dull surprise! Yes, unfortunately, this episode has some of the worst animation of the show so far, with the characters' faces and positions having almost no consistency even in the same scenes. Which is a shame, because as an introduction to a new character, it does take away from Korisu's unique and impressive abilities. But yeah, this little Alice had the ability to trap her victims in an inescapable wonderland where she played with them like dolls, which does bring up more than a few questions about how she thought up some of these scenarios. And they said that YouTube Kids was perfectly fine for the little munchkins. Anyway, Sayo once again proved that she was this show's butt monkey in more ways than one, and Haruka's VA also showed off some surprising range. Ultimately though, while Korisu's narrow Alice abilities were, as Kiwi put it, OP, they were balanced out by the user's lower stamina. With that, the first half of the episode ended with the villainesses retreating to put their teammate to bed. The second half of the episode, unfortunately, didn't follow the manga's chapter layout, but we'll save talking about that for later. For now, Kiwi, on top of still being thirsty as all hell, sang what I imagine was an ad-lib tune by Aoi Koga. The two ran to Korisu and decided to get to know her better by following her home. There, they found an empty apartment with some money for the little girl's dinner. Understandably, this raised a few red flags for Utena, who was a master of raising them herself. And her concerns were raised a little more when she saw Korisu's room that was full of dolls, old and new, and yet she seemed to take care of them all equally. I mean, duct tape is a good sign of love, isn't it? However, she seemed to be attached the most to an antique doll that she had kept in a case as extended play with it had left it in a little disrepair. Feeling bad for her, sensing that her parents weren't around, or maybe even were neglecting her, Utena offered to properly fix it. Obviously, it was a really nice and wholesome gesture that she even went all out for by pulling an all-nighter when it was particularly chilly. Only the truest of villains can start up another pandemic. Fortunately, not only did Korisu not believe in quarantine at all, but she is also willing to help nurse her cohort back to health with her powers. Again, if the Precure could do it, I don't see why this show can't. But yeah, she used all kinds of methods to make Utena feel better, though for whatever reason, and of all things in this show, they kind of censored a needle syringe from the original manga by turning it to, I think, an oral syringe, like the thing you'd use to help someone drink something rather than inject them. I mean, I get that Koisu wouldn't have an actual needle, but it is her imaginary world, so she can turn it into whatever she wants. Were they afraid about the implications of what Koisu might do with it? Because the manga didn't show what she did with it, while here, well, yeah, it's just a weird change. Regardless, she managed to nurse Utena back to health. With that, the following day, they told Kiwi about the incident, who of course wanted in on her own scenario, to which Koisu gave her exactly what she deserved. Well, you do have warrants for stealing the spotlight. Yeah, can you tell I'm not that much of a fan of Your Majesty? With that, the episode ended with Mrs. Morino proving that she wasn't too neglectful, and that money for dinner thing was probably just a one-off, since she was seemingly a busy single mother. Still, the fact that Koisu didn't need any more dolls to make up for her mother's absence said more than enough. This episode was an acceptable introduction for this character. I mean, No Alice has a pretty awesome power set that allows for a lot of childish creativity, and the quick bond she made with Utena was legit wholesome as all hell. That said, the animation was more than a little off, and I think the pacing could have benefited from just following the manga's layout. To be fair, it's probably not easy writing for a character like Koisu, who is only allowed to speak one real line this whole episode, which was just her transformation call. Thus, it is up to the visual storytelling and the characters interacting with her to pick up the slack. The former, unfortunately, couldn't really do it because of some inconsistent animation as a result of them needing to allocate the budget a little cheaper by having multiple directors. As a result, we also did miss out on some good comedic reactions from Sayo, though fortunately, the latter did its part, in particular in regards to Utena. I mean, aside from her getting a little too excited for the Alice in Wonderland cosplayer, this was probably the most wholesome version of Utena we've gotten so far. As on top of not transforming into Beze throughout this one, she was very supportive of her new teammate, even catching a cold just to make sure she wasn't lonely without her mother. Sure, it was a bit of a misinterpretation on her part, but it did show that she was sensitive to others' feelings, ironically kind of paralleling Haruka from last week, and showing that they were two sides of the same coin. On that note though, I do kind of wish they had followed that episode with a manga chapter that originally went in between these two stories. We'll probably get it next week, but I do think it would have acted as a better immediate follow-up to Haruka's quote-unquote shining moment. Still, I get that they want to do both of these Koisu chapters in one episode, like they did with Kiwi, so it's not too big a deal, and I just really want to see that chapter get adapted soon. For now though, Koisu was able to effectively show off her powers, which did highlight the Enor meets powers, which seemed to be based on the user's imagination, which, as a child, with less constrictions than her older teammates, did give her more than a few advantages. And overall, while this was probably one of the lesser episodes of the series, especially in regards to animation, it was still good stuff. Koisu is a fun new addition to the cast, with her and Utena having a cute relationship that also happens to bring out the best in her in more ways than one.
My man!
If you haven't seen it yet, maybe go check out our little review for Precure All-Stars F. I mean, you might want to watch it before Toy comes down at us in spite of all of the edits we tried to make for it. Regardless, it was a really fun film that we had a great time reviewing that also happened to feature a magical girl playing with others in her dollhouse that happened to span the entire cosmos. Check it out if you want. And until next time though, for now my friends, end up.
No time to say hello, goodbye, I'm late.
Yeah, dude, you do realize that we still have an hour left in lunch, right?